Okay, our first step is to determine which of these shelves is the top and which is the bottom. It is pretty easy to figure out. The bottom has holes all the way through it, and the top does not. No holes. Okay, we're gonna set aside the bottom for the time being. We're gonna take the top and we're gonna line it up on top of our ply. This is 1/4 inch ply. You could use 1/2 inch. You could use something even thinner if you wanted to. It doesn't matter too much. We're gonna line up these corners here, and then we are going to trace the outline so that we know what size to cut this board to. I'm leaving a little bit of overhang here because I'm going to trim around it later to get it flush. I'd rather have too much than too little. Now that we have that board, I'm going to prop this board up on some foam. This is just some old packing foam that came with a package I received. I like to cut on top of that, and I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to use a circular saw, but you can use any kind of saw you like. Now that that's done, we are going to glue this piece onto the top. I am going to use some simple Gorilla heavy duty construction adhesive. I'm gonna make sure there's as little dust as possible on here before I set this down. We'll work a nice spiral pattern. We're going to bring back our board, get that on top there, make sure it is flush or overlapping every edge. Again, we're going to come back and trim this flush. So I want to rather have some overhang than no overhang. Okay, and to secure that on there, we are going to use our trusty clamps. Tighten them up. Just for good measure, we put some weight right in the center. Now that's done, we're going to set this to the side so that it can dry. And we're going to bring out the bottom shelf and start painting. While the glue is drying on the upper shelf, I'm going to paint around the edge of the lower shelf. This is totally an optional step. If you don't want to paint, don't paint. Totally fine. In order to make this a little less messy, I'm going to prop up my shelf just on a couple pieces of scrap wood here. I am using latex paint and regular paintbrush. All right, there we go. And it's going to take 2 or 3 coats in order to get this nice and even covering that doesn't show these streaks. Painting's easy, they say. So at a certain point, we're gonna get as much paint on there as we can It's gonna need to dry before we can do a second layer to fill in some of these sort of streaky portions. So we'll just give that some time. Gonna take a little break. Okay, once we've got a few layers on here, giving it time to dry in between, I'm gonna set this aside for the final dry and bring back my top shelf. Back this, and I'm going to remove my clamps. Check it gently, make sure we've got a decent seal on here. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my router with a flush trim bit, and I'm going to go around the outside of this and get this edge flush with this. So if, like me, you end up with some of these sort of hairy edges here, let me see if you can see that. Maybe that's better. You can see that? We're just gonna take a sander and try to take those down a little bit. I'm gonna overwork this now because, again, this edge is gonna be up right against the siding. I'm gonna cover this, so yeah, this is working perfectly. Give it a quick little pass, and all of that is just coming right off beautifully. Nice. Okay, good. Yeah, that looks great. Okay, so now that we have our top and bottom prepped, we are ready to assemble. And for this, we're essentially going to follow our original instructions. We're going to start by taking the top piece, flipping it over, and sliding each of these legs into place, like so. Easy peasy. We're going to do that 4 times over in each corner. In and twist. Then we're going to take our bottom shelf, we're going to set it on top, and we're going to secure it down by passing the wheels down into that nut down there and tightening it here. Of course, they gave us a wrench, so we'll get this all into place. So at this point, we need to figure out what is going to be our front, what is going to be our back with the doors, and to define our center line so that we can start to attach some hardware and those doors. So this table is 19.5 inches wide. In other words, it is just half an inch shy of 20 inches, so we are going to go just 1/4 of an inch shy to mark our midpoint. Do the same thing here, 9 3/4 inches, right there. Good, so now we know where halfway is. Okay, so I will open up our Haka's door pulls. Super simple way to make sure that your holes are always exact. Take a piece of tape, mark the hole, just punch it through, find it, punch it through, boom, cool. Now I can take this and I can transfer it onto a door. Oh, so that's centered. This is 15.5 inches, which means I want the center 7 3/4. So we're gonna take it down.
A quick note on the placement of the handles. I strongly recommend moving them out to this second slat so that there's more space, because these are a little thick. They will collide and hit each other. So moving them out maybe into the seam here instead of on the last slat itself will give you a little more room. Now you can still obviously pull it shut, but it's not my favorite. I don't prefer it.
This is our left side. This is our right side. All right. Easy. Good. Now we'll attach the hardware. And this will be good. As you go through this, you're going to find that these screws are too long because they're made to go through a regular width cabinet door, and this obviously is much thinner. So you have two options. One, you could go to a hardware store and find shorter screws that match this thread, or you could add spacer washers. And that's what I'm going to do. Super simple, super effective. Cool, so now we are going to begin attaching the doors on here. Make sure you know where your front is, where your back is. We're gonna start in the front, wrap around, and this is gonna take a good amount of tape. I'm just gonna tee up a little bit of tape here to make it easier for myself as we get going. A couple pieces down there, and a couple pieces, and a couple more. Okay, I'm gonna grab my door, make sure I know which side it is, and we want it flush with the top of the table, which in this case means with what's on the bottom here. So set it up here. I'm lining up against the center line there. Easier to use that one. This one I can sort of eyeball it and get it pretty close. And once we're there, just pull that tape down and secure it. Make sure it's nice and flush. Bring this in. Get this nice and... So now everything that is going to move when this is finished is now locked down, and the things that are going to be locked down, we are able to move. And this is where we're going to start gluing. It makes the job a little bit easier to use a brad nailer and secure these in place as you go. We are going to apply the glue all along, a strip along the top here where it overlaps with our new siding, all along this bottom here, and a little bit along the post. All right, nice little bead up that way. A few beads on there, I'll do plenty. Oh, one here doesn't take a lot. Does not take a lot to do. 2 lines here, just stay safe. Good, okay. So that's like that. That's all got the glue on it. Press it flat. If you're me, you're now going to also throw in some brad nails as you go to make it extra secure. We'll just do every third or fourth post. And same along the bottom. Okay. Do a line, one line, show nobody, 2 lines, and then up here, on top of this, do a line, just like so. Right, alright. Alright, so that's the side, it's nice, tight, nice and snug, and we're gonna come back, as before, and get some quality security. The way I'm gonna make that gap in the center and the back to cascade through is I'm gonna take this sheet, I'm gonna fold it in half, and then I'm gonna cut off these two from the center here. I know which two I'm removing now. Just go back, get it done that way. So there's one, and there. There's two. Same thing as before. We're going to secure this on here with glue and some brad nails. As we go along. Good. If you don't have a brad nailer, I recommend you just walk away, leave this, let it set and dry. If you do have a brad nailer, you can probably safely move ahead to the next step. Okay, cool. So now we're going to install the cabinet hardware, the magnetic clasps that hold everything together. And we're going to start by using the line that we previously denoted for the center of our cabinet to place these on the inside. I'm just going to mark in the center of these. Okay, one. No. Okay. We'll just tee those. So I'm going to take a scrap piece of wood and I'm going to try and get each of these nice and flush. And then while holding it flush, I'm going to tighten it down the rest of the way. I am going to just attach a small bead of glue to each of these, right on the metal there. Boop, boop, boop. Yep. Good. And then I'm going to shut the doors, and then I'm going to grab on to that plate from the other side, remove it from the door so that I know exactly where it sets. I'm going to hold it there, and I'm going to use one of my handy dandy clamps to lock that down in place. Make sure it doesn't go anywhere. All right, clamp and lock that down. Now I'm going to let all of that cure, and that'll be that. Now that the glue has set, we're going to take our clamps off, and we're going to make sure that everything is lined up and ready to go. Ooh, look at that nice magnetic clasp there. Now, if you want, you can also do 2 more clasps at the bottom here. I'm perfectly happy with this up top. All right, so now, another optional step. If you like this finish, this flat, flush finish up top, by all means, keep it and just move ahead. But if you're like me and you enjoy doing the most, then you're gonna come back here with your router with a 1/4 inch round over bit. Let me show that to the camera. And you are going to route out this back edge here. Once you have these edges rounded out, you'll notice you'll have a whole bunch of little stray hairs. It's time for us to sand this down. Now there are two ways to do it. You could either get a simple sanding sponge and just gently work it and slowly take that down. Or if you have an orbital sander, get one of these sanding pads, these squishy sanding pads, to give you a little bit of space so that as you work those corners, it's rounded, the pad rounds for you. It's a little bit faster. Sanding sucks, no matter what you do. As we're sanding, we want to make sure we're not just working this top bit here, but actually working down a little bit and sort of feathering, because as we come back and apply a finish to this, we want to make sure it blends evenly down the side of the box and doesn't just suddenly sort of jump here and look very harsh. So I'm just going to gently go around and then work our way down towards the bottom to get a nice even feathering all the way around. Okay. Once we've sanded this box and we've got a nice smooth finish all the way around, we need to clean it up, take off as much of that dust as possible before we apply our finish. Now you can do this any way you want. You can simply wipe it clean, or you can use a vacuum, which is what I'm going to do. Now we are just about ready to apply our finish. Before we do that, I'm going to tape off these handles. To apply this kind of finish, you want to flood the surface. You want to be completely saturated and allow that to penetrate for 15 minutes. And then you want to reapply. So wherever you see it drying up, you reapply. All right? And just keep it wet, keep it soaked, keep it fully saturated. And then at the end, you're going to wipe that off, finally let that dry, and then do a final sand. So there are a bunch of ways you could apply this. You could just dump some on top and then spread it out using a brush. You could soak a cloth. I find that shop cloth works really well for that. If you use an actual nylon cloth, there is a risk that as you drag it across the top, if you do hit a little snag in the wood, you're gonna tear the wood, as opposed to using a shop cloth, you're gonna tear the cloth and not damage the wood. So soak that, spread it all over. That works really well. What I like to do is put that finish into a spray bottle and just soak it. This allows me to work really fast, get an even coat all over, and just keep turning it, keeping it wet, and keeping it going. So there we go. Let's start to apply our finish. And you can always double up, use two different methods. to get it on there. Okay.
Movie, let's go. Now, let's just make sure on the inside here, we're also getting this exposed bit. Good.
Along the bottom of our cabinet here, we are just gonna wipe and make sure it doesn't bead. We're gonna let it sit for 15 minutes, and then we are going to come back and do another layer. Okay, and now for the final step. Once the finish has had a chance to set and to cure, when you touch it, it shouldn't feel tacky to the touch. It should feel hard to the touch, fully on there now. I'm gonna take my finest grit sandpaper, and we are just gonna go in and very lightly sand the surface. Go around, not trying to take off a lot of material here, just very gently smoothing out that top layer. You can fold your sanding pad in half and just work gently through each of these grooves. I'm just going to give it a nice little 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is just the detail stuff. And now truly the last step is to take off our tape, wipe off all that dust, and see how it looks. Just wipe off that small bit of dust that we have just created. And just like that, we are done.